All right. Our guest speaker for tonight is Mike Waters, who's here in person, and we're doing a little bit kind of a strange configuration here. So if it looks like we don't know what we're doing, it's because we don't know. At this point, I'll turn off. Let's see if I turn your sharing. Monitor 2. Okay. At this point, I will give you a mic and a camera. Oh, I don't know what the camera's going to look like.
Oh, you can go ahead and put it up. Well, hello, everybody. Does it sound okay?
I'm going to stop this for a moment. Okay, good. I just want to make sure that.
There we go.
All right.
Okay. Well, what I thought to do tonight is to do a little bit more of just a straight Bible study on a subject that I've been trying to gain a better understanding of, and it's something really basic. And what I'm thinking is that we can think we know what we're talking about and be setting our mind in certain patterns, but I feel it's always good to go back and just look through definitions. And so the subject I've been trying to do a more in-depth study on is prayer. Just what does it mean to pray? And so we'll start out with Merriam-Webster English definition, because we're all English speakers. We think in terms of our English language and our King James English, and especially with the Bible. And so I'll start with the English definition for the word pray. Number 1, to speak to God, especially in order to give thanks for something. Number 2, to hope or wish for something to happen. 3, to seriously ask someone to do something. And this is derived from a Middle English and the Anglo-French word, which is basically similar, prayer. But I know in discussing this subject with people, someone will say, well, we have prayer all wrong. It isn't. It's only prayer if you're really crying out with all of your heart. Or it's, some other thing is. And so when we read our Bibles in English, we have to remember that we're getting it from 2 different languages, even before it gets to English. First we have the Hebrew, and then we have the Greek. And so I thought we would just go through the Bible and compare words and triangulate between the English words, the Hebrew words, and the Greek words, and see if it all matches up. And I have a few versions up just to show a few different English translations from the same, from the Greek or the Hebrew. And do we have the Bible Works up?
Yes.
Or is it showing me?
It's not showing you. What you got there is what it sees.
Okay.
That's the drawback to this program.
Okay. So
basically, you can ask them if they see it.
Yeah, that'd be good to make sure that it's all.
And then talk to you back on the chat.
Yeah, which they'll talk to you, and then you'll have to talk to me.
Does everybody see the Bible Works screen okay?
Yep, can do here.
Okay, good. That's all we need to hear.
Yep, just to make sure that we're all, because we're doing it just a little differently. But I'll go back to the Merriam-Webster number 1 definition for the word pray. It's to speak to God, especially in order to give thanks for something. So I just started out with bringing up the word thanks. Now I gotta find my mouse. So I go this, okay. And we'll bring up the Hebrew here for thanks. Oh, okay, we gotta, okay. Bring up the word thanks, which that's what Merriam-Webster defines prayer as, is thanking God for something, or especially in order to give thanks. So we see that the word thanks, and NIV says praise. And I'll give thanks in New King James and extol in RSV. So we bring up the Hebrew word, and it's number 3034, yada, which means to throw, shoot, cast out, throw down, laud, praise, or confess, to give thanks. So here's a little, one of my first stumpers that I have as well. Usually we think about, we sit down before a meal and we give thanks, which means we're praying before our meal. But we don't see pray come up in any of the in any of the meetings with the word yada. So we can go down, and it says, 1 Chronicles 16 verse 8, give thanks unto the Lord, call upon his name, make known his deeds. And we check it out, and it's the same Hebrew word, yada. Go right down the list. It says, give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. And so we see it's the same Hebrew word. Okay, 1 Chronicles 16 verse 35, that we may give thanks, the same Hebrew word, that we may give thanks to your holy name, so that we may glory in your praise. So I can just make it a little bit long story short. I've kind of gone through this all, and it's basically the same story. The giving thanks is never translated prayer or pray. So is giving thanks prayer? And I'll just put that question out there. You can put it up on a shelf, and that'll be a point of discussion. Because there's two other definitions here. Now we can go to definition number 2, is to hope or to wish for something to happen. Now, that's actually does translate the word pray and prayer. And it actually, it's not something we might think of. When we think of wishing for something, we generally don't think that we're praying for something, if we're just wishing for something. But this is very interesting to go through. So, okay, I'll bring up the word wish, if it'll work. And it's not working again. What did I do?
Click on that window.
I click on the window.
Okay, now try typing.
Okay. Maybe I'm not on the King James. That could do. I'll change search version. A technical difficulty.
I'll try it. Okay, well, we're going to do something different here.
Okay, try it again. That might be just that it was using extra bandwidth.
Yeah,
Huh?
where's my cursor?
Oh no, it was right there. You're on.
Okay, here it is. I'll try it again.
Try it again, yeah. No? Ooh, technical problems.
Here, just keep talking.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I'm not done talking about thanks yet. Then for some reason here, I was going on to the next word is wish in the definition. And, oh, we're working. Okay. Okay. Then we'll, oh, it's not, okay, very good. Yeah, we're having our few challenges here. Okay, well, I'll just start in the Psalms. Yep. Yeah, I'll just start at the top. Okay, Job is the first one. According to your wish in God's stead. And we see here it's the Hebrew word peh, which is mouth. It's the same basic word as the Hebrew letter peh. Okay, those that shame, put to shame that those that wish me evil. And there you have kafetz as desiring, which is what we think of wish as being. So now in the Hebrew, it's pretty similar in that wishing is pretty close to our meaning. But now if we look in Romans, we see the Greek word here is yokomai. That would be the very basically, okay, I don't know. It might be good to take this. Oh, no, I can't do that.
Computer's not right.
No, it's fine. It's just it didn't bring up the Strong's numbers, and there's a little extra thing I can do to go right to the Strong's numbers.
Yeah, you go to footprints. No, okay, go back to footprints.
Okay.
Now go to one of these brings up the numbers. No, the next one over.
This one?
This way, back this way. That one.
Oh no, that'll just give me the.
Okay, one of those gives you the Strongs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we just got the Bible work set up on the new computer, so working some bugs out. But the point I wanted to bring up is if we look at the word wish and relate it to prayer, we have the word 2172. And I can do it this way. I'll just type in 2172.
Hi there. Oh, the greater than less than brings up. Tools. I'm clicking on it.
Yeah, I can do it just the other way.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Now, where am I going? Do?
Strong's numbers right there. Perfect. Very good. Yeah, this is real good because it'll show you where the same Greek word is translated in different ways. So if we take the Greek word eukomai, which is translated wish, now if we take it in another place, it's I would to God. Okay, Acts 27. Wished for the day. Okay, Acts 27, verse 29 in the NIV. And I prayed for daylight. New King James, and prayed for day to come. RSV. But see, in the King James, it's wished. So we see the word wish here. It says Romans 9, verse 3. For I could wish that myself were accursed from Christ, my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. And here, all four versions say, I could wish. See how the word is used in different ways? Now here, the same Greek word, eukomai, is translated, I pray to God. And NIV, now we pray to God. Now I pray to God is the New King James. So here it's the same Greek word translated, pray or wish. So we see the basis for the Merriam-Webster English definition number 2 for prayer. It goes back to wishing for something. It's used that way throughout the New Testament, not the Old Testament, not in the Hebrew, but it's unique to the Greek language translating to English. And if we look at, and we can make a decision as we read the different versions, which we think is the better word, because here again in 2 Corinthians 13, verse 9, it says, we wish even for your perfection. Whereas the NIV says, our prayer is for your perfection. And New King James also translates it pray. RSV also translates it pray. So in James 5, verse 16, it says, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another that you may be healed. It's the same Greek word that's also translated wish. Remember that it's translated one way or the other depending upon which emphasis the translator wanted to give. So here we see, unlike the word thanks, where it doesn't necessarily translate one-to-one to prayer, or the words for pray or prayer in Greek or Hebrew, we see that wishing something for another translates to prayer. It's the same, we bring it up here, it's eukomai, to pray to God, to wish, to pray for. So then if we can see that, okay, just review a little bit. Wishing is more of a New Testament or a Greek one-to-one type of a translation. Whereas in the Hebrew Old Testament, wish is wish. It's not translated to the word prayer. Now we come to definition number 3. And I think this is the main definition when we think about it, when we think about prayer. Number 3, to seriously ask someone to do something. And So, okay, I'll bring up the word pray. And we'll start in Genesis 12, verse 13. It says, "Say, I pray thee, that you are my sister." Okay, so this isn't praying to our Father in heaven. This isn't praying to God. It's just talking, you're praying to a person. And here again we see it. So Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee." So we can go down through and we see that the first examples of the word pray is what one person is saying to another, which goes back to the number 3 definition, to seriously ask someone to do something. So we go through this now. Genesis 18, verse 4. Again, one person talking to another person. The word pray doesn't necessarily mean, in the English language, doesn't necessarily mean talking to God, to our Father in heaven. It's in this sense, it's to seriously ask someone to do something in the English language. So you can, it's maybe not a modern usage, and so in our modern usage, we look at it as only being in the sense of talking to our Father in heaven. But the original meaning of the word pray is to seriously ask someone to do something in the English language. And here again, Genesis 19, verse 7, and said, "I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly, or do not do this wicked thing." It's all in the sense of one person asking someone to do something. Okay. Now, a good example of this use of this word is in Genesis 24. And we know the story of Abraham speaking to Pharaoh. And
Whoever that is, please mute your mic.
Yeah, again, it's, "I pray that I may drink." Okay, yeah, it's all people. I didn't even get to Pharaoh yet. It's all people praying to each other. I hope that's brings a little clarity on our English word. That the original meaning of the word is not necessarily to give thanks. It's to seriously ask someone to do something. Kind of browsing down through here and looking for examples of even where they're praying to God in heaven. See, that's the thing. Now, if we go to the, thank you. If we go to the Hebrew word, can get down here a little bit more. Oh. It's a bit to get down to where it's even talking about praying to the Father in heaven. And remember, the King James is English. That's where we got our word pray from. All the way through here. I had it. Let's see. I have to look at my example. Okay. I need to go back up a little bit. This is where the first time that I found that it's the word pray is used in reference to talking to God in heaven. And this is where Pharaoh was saying, "Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all yours will die." And that's the word to pray is palal, which means to intervene, to interpose. Then if I go ahead and I look at that word, and so here Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. So here we see that Abraham prayed to God.
You bought your homes again.
Oh, okay.
But just leave it. Just leave it right there.
Okay.
Just grab it and move it where you need it.
Okay. So that was kind of a, I was running, as I was studying this, I was running into things that I did not quite expect, because we attach meanings to words in our language. Not only do we have our English word, which King James English is the original English language, and we've modified it somewhat from that time. And so when we look at the Merriam-Webster definitions in our modern time, basically they're speaking about what the modern meaning is. So my whole point here is to go back and look at the Hebrew and the Greek words and try to connect it to the English language. And so if we go by the Strong's numbers, which, in other words, if we go by the basic Hebrew words, we can try to connect and see how it connects to the English language. Now we get into Numbers, and we see that Moses prayed to the Eternal.
You probably remind you. Sorry. Keep talking.
And so finally we're getting to here where a human isn't just praying to another person, they're praying to the Eternal, to the Lord.
Okay. Sorry.
And Numbers 21, verse 7, we see again that Moses is praying to the Eternal, which, again, if we look, it's to intervene, interpose, to mediate, to intercede. So this would be what we might call intercessory prayer, this definition, where you're praying on behalf of somebody else. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy. Yeah, and here Moses is praying for Aaron. The Eternal was angry enough with Aaron to destroy him, but at that time I prayed for Aaron too. The same Hebrew word. So here we're connecting the English word pray with the Hebrew word, and we're connecting it with a meaning, which is to intercede or intervene, and or if we go back to our number 3 definition, to seriously ask someone to do something. Intercessory prayer. So hopefully we're starting to get a little clarity here about prayer in the Bible. Here again, Moses prayed to the Lord and said, O sovereign Lord, do not destroy your people, your own inheritance, that you redeemed by your great power and brought out Egypt with a mighty hand. So finally, we see there's a powerful prayer just for a nation. Here's an example in 1 Samuel 1 verse 10. In the bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. She prayed to the Eternal, to the Almighty, the Yahweh. She was in the bitterness of soul and prayed. Now we see that bitterness of soul kind of modifies and defines it. The word itself doesn't mean crying out with bitterness of soul. The word means to seriously ask someone to do something. So here we have more words added to it. So prayer isn't just crying out with the bitterness of your soul. That is one kind of prayer. Okay, then we see that she kept on praying to the Eternal, and Eli observed her mouth. She was praying silently, and we see that that's a tremendous example of for us about how to pray. Again, to ask seriously. And if we go up to, I think from here we see mostly from this point on in the Old Testament, when it's using the word pray or prayed or praying, 64:19 in the Strong's number for the Hebrew word palal, that generally from here out, it's talking about praying to the Eternal. And it's not so much used about praying to other people, seriously requesting them to do something. So we see that the context, the meaning is to seriously ask someone to do something, but we usually use the word pray in prayer, as it says in the Merriam-Webster, to speak to God. And we see that all the way up if we start in the Psalms, 64:19. Listen to my cry for help, my King and my God, for to you I pray. So that's a very, in the Merriam-Webster, it puts that as a number 3 definition. But in my study, in going through this, the number 3 definition is really the number 1 definition. Is that when we use the word pray, it means to seriously ask someone, which is implied, if we use the word pray, we're asking our Father in heaven to do something for us, either for ourselves, as Hannah did, or as Moses did on behalf of the nation or on behalf of his brother. And another word, I'll just bring that word up here. Okay. It's two. Strong's word 6.2. Oh, for some reason that didn't work. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the computer to get caught up. Hopefully everything's coming through okay.
Is that working?
It's really slow. Maybe that means
Give me keyboard again.
okay.
Like I need batteries.
Oh, batteries.
Spin these again.
Okay.
I'll try it again.
Okay. Yep, that did it. Okay. Huh. No, it's not working good.
I'm putting in a call for help right now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll use what I have here.
I'll go and see here.
Oops.
Hope I got some trouble.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few other words. I just have to get to them because we have some technical problems here. Sorry for the problems. Okay, I'm going to try to... Oh, this is interesting. The word I was wanting to go to was prayer, because to pray is generally in the sense of a verb. That's an action. That's what we do. Interestingly enough, in King James, the word prayer, which I have the cursor over here, is 6419. Strong's number 6419. And if we notice that's a noun form, but the NIV turns it back to the verb, may people ever pray for him. New King James uses the noun form, and then the RSV, the noun form. But this is a very interesting difference in the Hebrew, is that the same word it's not the same word when it's between a noun and a verb, like it is in the Greek. And if we get a couple batteries here, I'll hand this over. We can get back to typing again. Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, prayer shall be made. Here's a little sidelight I can do while we're waiting. In Psalm 106, verse 30, it's translated, Phineas, then stood up Phineas and executed judgment.
Try those.
And so the plague was stayed.
It
Now,
helps.
okay, yeah, let's try this first, get their technical side. Yeah, it's just slow now, it works.
No, it works, but slow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just continue my interesting sidelight.
Sorry.
All right. In Psalms 106, we are seeing the story about when Israel was going through the land of Moab. And, they were sinning. And then we see Phineas says, Phineas stood up and intervened, and the plague was checked. Now, the Hebrew word is the same as for prayer. And we know that Phineas did more than pray. That's just a little sidelight, but he did intercede. In other words, it shows the true meaning is that he intervenes. He interceded for Israel. And so whether this is talking about Phineas saying a short prayer before he thrust the sword through, or this is talking about thrusting the sword through, we can see that either way, he intervened or he interceded. He did intercession on behalf of Israel. So we're getting a little bit more to the nuts and bolts. But I wanted to bring up the word prayer just to show. Come on. Computer's being slow. Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, it's just slow.
I think you have a question. But
Is there any comments or questions coming up?
yeah. Say it again.
Oh, I was just gonna. What was I gonna do? No, I forgot.
You asked if there's any comments or questions.
Oh, okay. If there's any comments or questions,
I got the mic's open.
yeah, we could probably get into this now about, because I mean I could just go on and on showing all the interesting word plays between the Hebrew and the Greek and try to bring out more understanding. But so go ahead and start thinking of questions. I was just going to go through one more thing here about an interesting word play. Is it?
Okay. All right, here's your handbag.
Okay. I'll get it done yet here. Prayer. See if it comes up. Nope. Too slow. Okay. I think we're taxing your computer system here. It won't let me get to that point. Okay, try again. PR. Huh. Okay.
Is it not working?
Not working, but it's not backspacing or going forward. Oh, now it did. Yeah. Sorry for the difficulties. We're doing it a little different way here.
Yeah, we were
Taxi.
afraid that your computer was going to crash, and now mine's not doing very well.
Yeah, mine would have been a lot worse, I think.
Oh, it's weird. It's just not seeing it.
Yeah, is there?
Try typing here once.
Oh, I've got to do backspace first. Oh, maybe that's it.
It's not seeing it. That's the problem. It's
There's something in between. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. The batteries helped. Okay. Well, it's I can lift it up then if I need to.
I'll just give you something higher to type on.
Okay. Well,
I think the soundboard is in the way.
oh, okay.
Put that up.
We'll put that up here.
See if that helps.
Sorry for the distractions, guys. The point I was wanting to make is that unlike English or Greek, in Hebrew, the noun form is a totally different word, and I'd like to learn more about that because here we have the word prayer is 8605 Strong's number, and that's basically talking about prayer the way we think of it, is that putting up to a prayer to our Father in heaven, a poetic or a liturgical prayer. So that actually goes back to a little bit. The first definition is to speak to God about something, and that only goes back as far as David's time, actually, and starts in 2 Samuel and the Kings. Of course, Nehemiah, but now we see it in Job also. But it's not found anywhere in Torah. It's not found in Genesis. But here it's actually basically a word that's just talking about praying to our Father in heaven, to God, to Yahweh. And this is in the form of a noun. And so I thought that was really interesting, that it's just a little different. You know, it's almost like the word developed, even in the Old Testament times, the word developed through time and its usage. And instead of being used to just to talk one person to another, to seriously ask someone to do something, the word itself kind of grew into meaning talking to our Father in heaven. And that this would be a question I'd have on the Hebrew as well. Why is the word tefillah? If we take that word there, number 8605, tefillah, and that kind of stumped me for a while because there's another word very similar called tehillah. It's just a F instead of H. So tehillah would be a prayer, but now let me take you to the word tehillah, which is very similar to me. Yeah, that worked better. Let me show you this. I will praise you, which is a word yada.
comment came out about Job being an older book.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very interesting. That was a very interesting thing that came up about Job being an older book, and the Hebrew. Because we can see which Hebrew words are being used at different times in the chronology, and that it was really a stumper to me that the word for prayer, tefillah, is used in the book of Job, which would be theoretically before, unless the only thing is that the book of Job was translated at a later time. I guess would be the only thing I can think of, because Job was an Edomite king, and I'm not sure which form of Hebrew he would have spoke at the time, so it could have been adjusting. But yeah, that's Job is a very interesting question, because when you get into the Hebrew, you start with roots, and we can know that Hebrew started as a picture language, and it did not have the words that were all connecting. In other words, you knew from the context, it was like hieroglyphics, and we didn't have punctuation or paragraphs or verses, and each picture had a meaning. So when we look at the history of the words, it's something to kind of piece through. And I, just to review a little bit, what I've kind of found is that, with our modern definition, we usually use the word prayer in speaking to God. So I, showed that the original English language was modified, that the original English word pray could be used person to person, not just to God. So that was one point I wanted to make. But now later, even in the Old Testament, at later times, the word pray pretty much was only used in speaking to God, just like from King James time to now. So we see the words kind of change their context through time. And then the second point I wanted to make was that to hope or wish for something to happen is also a form of prayer. And that goes back to the Greek, because it's the same Greek word that's used that in a instance which you could have wishing or hoping for something to happen. It can be translated pray. And that's kind of unique to the Greek and to English. But the number 3 definition, to seriously ask someone to do something, is really, to me, the essence of prayer. And now we can ask in a more quiet way. We can ask in a crying out, and with our whole heart. And we see different examples of the word pray being used. But it is seriously asking God to do something for either yourself or for somebody else. And it's used in that form of that same word in a context of intercession, which is a really important thing. And but the evolution, you might say, of the language, both the Hebrew and the Greek and then the English, based upon translating those languages, is really interesting. And I'd actually have several more points, because when we get into praise, that would be a whole nother subject. But that's where thanks is usually, if we see the word, now I gotta Okay, I gotta go the other way.
There we go.
You see this word 3034 here. It says, I will praise. And that's the same one that I was bringing up as where it's confess. Okay, here, 2 Chronicles 6:24, it's translated confess. And the word, I should review the word, yada, is to throw, to shoot, to cast out, give thanks, laud, or praise. So we can while we're speaking to our Father in heaven, we can thank him. But thanking him of itself is, interestingly enough, never translated to the word pray or prayer in the Bible. It's a part of prayer. Thankfulness is a part of prayer. So to give thanks is not prayer of itself, like we have commonly come to, to use that word, that we'll give thanks before a meal. But we know what it means is that we're going to speak to God in order to give him thanks, which by another way of looking at it is speaking to God is going back to the Hebrew word tefillah, which is prayer in the speaking to God, in the context of speaking to God. So this might be a little bit confusing, especially with our technical issues here. So I just want to open it up to question and answer now.
If you have a question or anything you'd like to ask, you can type it in the chat room, or you can open your mic. And if you're one of those people that I muted your mic, you'll have to ask me to open it in the chat room. So, any questions for Mike? Just you turn on your webcam, and we can see who you are, or you can just go ahead and ask. Let me take that. I'm going to end the sharing for the moment. We'll go back to that. I want to get rid of this announcements.
Entry and exit chimes are off.
Wow.
Okay, here's some comments. Can you read them?
No.
Let's see. Isn't Job an older book? So the meaning was simple. Okay, we did that one. It just seems that person to person came after the simple meaning to God only. I really enjoyed that.
Okay. Yeah. The thing is, it's a lot of us are challenged with the English language. And I think in studying the Bible, it's a point of humility to first try to understand the English language better and not to put on our the context that maybe we grew up with. It'd be always good to study the language a little bit more and the history of the language. But then what I've been really learning is that there are not one-to-one word meanings between Hebrew and English or Greek to English or even Hebrew to Greek. And so what I try to do is to look at different translations and then see how it's translated from in the Old Testament to the Greek in the Septuagint, see how it's translated from the Septuagint to the New Testament, Greek. So I'll look for the same Greek word in the Old Testament to the New Testament. And
Very well.
Okay, very good. And it's it's really interesting. And, I can spend hours and hours just comparing words. And it's, I know people will have their opinions, what a word means to them. But I think it's really good to go back and just study the Hebrew words so that we really know the context that they're being used in. And that'll help us because we need to pray. We need to pray to our Father in heaven every day. And we need to seriously ask him to do something for us or for somebody else, because there are health issues, there's financial issues, there's any one of a number of problems that we can intercede to each other for. But then it also can mean, as we see in the Greek, and especially in the New Testament, to hope or wish for something to happen. And praying can mean that you just wish, you're wishing good for somebody. That's a little prayer offered up, as we see from the example of the Apostle Paul. And so we see that there's all sorts of ways that we can be talking to our Father in heaven, and to be thinking about each other, whether we're just wishing someone well or whether we're seriously intervening on their behalf and interceding. And we can pray for our nation. We're told to pray for our leaders. There's just no end of things to pray for. And what I just wanted to go through here was the words. And then once you have the definitions down, then we can talk about each subject a little bit better, because we can go through the prayers of David and look at his example. We can look at the prayer even of Solomon or the prayers of Moses, and to see how each one prayed. And not to mention in Matthew 6, the example prayer. And that's a whole nother topic just by itself, about how to break down and pray. And actually even the history of why were the disciples asking him those questions, because he was specifically addressing some specific prayers, such as the standing prayers that the Jewish people were doing at that time. And so it's a huge subject, and I just basically got a little bit of a start into it, trying to establish definitions.
Okay. Marlene, I tried to unmute you from my end, and it's telling me that you've muted yourself. But here's your question. How do you see intercessory prayer compared to asking prayer for others?
That's by definition, intercessory prayer is asking for prayer for others. That is the exact definition. You're interceding on another's behalf. Which that would be the Hebrew word number 6419. It's quite a bit in very interesting study.
Okay, Gina says, I just read 2 articles today that call for action, and prayer is action by what you do showed also.
Yeah, prayer is the noun form and pray is the verb. So when we pray, that's the action. And then pray would be putting up a petition. And so that would be to seriously ask someone. And so then, as a result, it talks in James about if we see someone that's in need and, send them off saying we'll pray for him and don't do what we can to help them, well, that's kind of useless too. So what you're saying is right. We need to follow through. I mean, there's just so many things when you get into the subject, so many things that break off of this subject. Some it's just throughout the Bible. You know, one thought I've had on that subject is sometimes I don't have something to give to somebody, and I know they need it. Then I can pray that someone who has what they need can give it to them, and that's all I can do because I don't have anything to give to them, or I just can't get it to them. And then look for the miracle to happen of a supernatural answer to prayer.
Any other comments or any comments or personal examples you'd like to mention?
Yes, especially personal examples of prayer.
Yes, I agree, Gina. Gina is saying, I never seen or heard it so quiet. Wake up, everybody.
We're awake. We're just mulling it over, you know. I mean, laying on of hands is another form of prayer, too.
Yeah, it's really interesting to read those things in the original languages and connect it all together, because we can connect this all, and it just expands our knowledge base, because there is the laying on of hands uh, also in association with anointing with oil. And in my own experiences, you know, where I've had the hands-on experience, you might say, and just to see the spirit moving. I I could name a couple different examples, I guess, but you just feel God's presence, and you see the miracle happening before your own eyes as you're praying and laying on hands. And I know we all have examples like that we can talk about, where we see miraculous answers to prayers, even sometimes even while we're praying.
Mm-hmm. Marlene Caressa says, before the Feast of Tabernacles, I prayed specifically for people. It was always such a joy after the feast to hear the people's stories and, unknown to them, answers to my prayer.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing, is the main thing. I think the example number 3 is or the definition number 3 is, we seriously ask uh, for something, and that's what we do. You know, as while we're the word prayer itself in our English language originally didn't mean just to talk to God. It meant to seriously ask someone to do something. That was the original meaning. So, but while we're talking to our Father in heaven, we can praise him, we can thank him, and then we can also seriously ask for something. And another English word is entreat. That's also a synonym for prayer. And an entreat might go back more to the words used in the New Testament for to wish, to entreat. If you look that up, entreating and to wish good for somebody is pretty much a parallel concept. But I guess if I'd really try to say it really clear, is that, talking to God is not necessarily the original meaning of the word prayer or to pray. It's to pray is to seriously ask someone, but in the context of our language, both in the Hebrew as well as in English, it usually means that we're praying to our Father in heaven. And while we're doing that, we can thank him and we can praise him, but we can also intercede for somebody else and or for ourselves. And we can also hope or wish for something to happen. And we can do this in a formal way. We can do this with other people, with laying on of hands. And we can just be praying in our heart as we're doing our daily activities also by wishing good things.
Well, one of the things that we've noticed, having met with another group for some time, which we're no longer, we're back to our separate groups now, is the approach to praying and laying out of hands. And it is somewhat disconcerting that there are folks still out there that feel that only the minister or the elder has that ability to pray on others' behalves. I mean, I think the things that you went through this evening are proof positive that invitation is open to all. And I think it's just unfortunate that mentality continues to be pervasive.
I have to. Are we now?
No.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Thank you.
I think Gail's got a comment too.
Okay.
Read it.
Okay. I'll just share a story. And I have to be honest, I did not know about that minister with the bottle of anointing oil thing until, well, how many years? Maybe 25 years after baptism, to show how ignorant I can be about a church. For 25 years, I did not know that you couldn't pray for someone to be healed and anoint them with oil and lay hands on them. And I was just sharing with a group that believed that way, that, about experience I had with a customer, and his daughter-in-law was crippled. And she just had twins, and she was basically paralyzed. And they just asked if I'd come over and talk with them and about healing and get a little advice. And so they asked me if I'd pray with them. And I said, well, I guess I'm an old guy. Do you have any olive oil? And, proceeded to pray with them and anoint with oil. And long story short, went back about a week later, and she bounced down the steps.
Cool.
But it was a huge shock to me. I guess it still is. That the reception I got at church when I told them. And looking back, it's just really sad. All those years that we were, all of the unanswered prayers and all of the problems, and to look back and see that just the teaching about healing and prayer and how it was so wrong and all of the tragedies that occurred. And, that I guess I'm still sad.
Oh, don't be. You gave her a freedom that maybe someday she'll look back on, and she'll glorify God for what.
Well, actually, the family are Sabbath keepers now, and
All right. Thank you.
so yeah, it's good to see the good fruits. Gail had something.
Gail, let me go back to where it was here. Oh, okay. I don't know if you can see it.
No.
Gail says the prayer group she's in prays for unbelievers in Middle East to have dreams and visions, and that we saw videos of many of them having the dreams and visions of Yeshua. It's good to quote verses from the Bible for specific needs.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And then Gail continues saying the group's been together for over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably an interesting tandem discussion on prayer in general is that there are those who believe you have to pray a certain way in order to be heard. So I know that could be another whole discussion in itself, but just kind of throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's going back a little bit to that experience that I was just telling you about. It actually caused me to just to go to independent groups pretty much exclusively, because when I was told that, oh no, I shouldn't have prayed for somebody, I should have called the minister in Minnesota and had them come over and have a meeting and pray with them and to have them healed, and then to think back of all the people that really never were healed over the years. It's just really sad to see the people that have unanswered prayers and that have long-term health issues, and they just never get over it. And I'm wondering, I pray and I ask, well, why is that? And the thought came up, and I think it's in 1 Corinthians 11 about the divisions amongst us, that we're competing with each other and fighting each other and going off into different schisms. And that's one reason the prayers aren't answered. And we just need to get back to the basic fundamentals and forget about all this corporate identities and doctrinal distinctions and just really seek God.
I probably have said this before, but the people I work for, the Canes family operation, and they're Catholic, very devout Catholics. And I know that Barbara, the patriarch of the company, she has said to me several times that she prays for every single driver that they return safely without incident. And she even said that for the 69 or 70 years they've been in business, they've had drivers wreck, they've had drivers get wrecked, but the driver returned safely. The truck may not have returned safely, or circumstances always worked out that the driver was okay and it was something that they could deal with. And I've over the years I've heard, oh well, God doesn't hear their prayer because they're in the wrong church. I think it's a bunch of that's a bunch of hooey. I think God looks on the attitude. And that has a lot to do with why a prayer is answered or not. Are you just doing it for rote because you got your little pocket prayer? You got God in your pocket, or is this a sincere thing? What do you believe?
Do we have more?
Let's see. Oops. James 4 also says we don't have because we don't ask. Gail says, "Oh wow, I never heard such a thing you've experienced." Um, okay. Thank you, Don, for pointing out that it's not just one group or church or whatever, that it's deep in the heart.
Well, we've always heard it said that we're rewarded according to our obedience, and I always looked on that as a generic way that whatever obedience we have, if we pray wholeheartedly, our prayers, and we're obedient in that, our prayers will be answered regardless if we're disobedient in another area. Not to say that it's good to be disobedient in any area, but if we're, we have living laws here, and if we pray to our Father in heaven with our whole heart, even if with not knowing everything about everything, I believe the prayers are answered. And just like if we honor our mother and father, and we're Catholic or Buddhist or whatever, there's a blessing for that.
Gina also says, I can share one way prayer works. It is in the asking. I have learned to ask in the moment and in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, she's still typing. Oh, and he answers in the moment.
Mm-hmm. I think in these times it's especially important to uh, devote yourself to prayer, uh, and that's why I was studying the subject, because I was feeling, well, I just need to dig into it more deeply and to see more examples, and just to turn over a few more stones. And it's amazing, how all the concepts interconnect. And because you can go into thanks and praise and all the ways uh, to do that while speaking to others or while speaking to our Father in heaven. And I mean, it just connects with every area of our life. But just to take the time and devote the time to really go in deep with, and that's where the Sabbath is good, because that's a set apart day from all of your other days. And then every day it's good to have set apart time. And I'm hoping to do more myself, even just personal, and to be more like some good examples, that I've read about or heard about. Do we have any?
Oh, Gina's typing away here.
Okay.
Continuing on Gina's string here, he answers in the moment. and I ask, help me in what I do now in a particular thing, and he answers in a voice in my head. And it's always right on, simple as what oil, what herb, what salve, where should I go now, etc. And it is becoming constant all day now. Listening is vital to the prayer. Gail says, I remember a cousin was here and his wife called up that the neighbor's house was burning. So we immediately prayed and declared the fire to die, and it did. I have had to, Gina again says, I have had to learn to listen. And the better all listening, the better the prayer. I can remember Peggy and I actually asking God to show us where our prayers being answered. Because sometimes we get so busy we don't see that something small in our lives is actually an answer. Or in praying, I mean, driving, I do a lot of prayer because I get in some bad situations. But I often wonder when I ask God for protection and I get delayed. Was that delay to prevent me from being in a specific place where harm could have come? Again, you have to ask, show me where you have answered the prayer.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why I stopped asking and praying for patience.
I suppose you wanted patience now?
No, I think it's much better just to pray for other people at this point. Sometimes you're just zipping through Facebook and, like Gina says, in the moment, it's right there. It doesn't take anything just to, pray to the Father for whatever it is that the person's asking. Just a quick little thing, and as you do it on a daily basis, it's like you're starting to tune in your receiver into his Wi-Fi, for lack of a better way to describe it. And it becomes a constant communication. I mean, I don't even keep count anymore. I used to. It's like a natural thing. Hey, I'm having a tough time with this. Can you help me focus? Or, is there something else I need to be looking at? And, like Gina's saying, you just go with it.
Prayers don't have to be very long. Back in,
This is Marge.
go ahead, Marge.
One of the things I like to pray for every day is wisdom. And I try to I try to remember to do that, no matter if I'm just going to the grocery store. Pray for wisdom on what I buy, and it seems to work. My prayer seems to be answered all the time. So it's not just the big things, but it's the little things that I need wisdom for. So someone once told me to pray for wisdom. This is years ago, and I started asking every day, and it didn't seem like I was getting any wisdom. Then all of a sudden, something came out of my mouth one day, and I thought, where did that come from? I didn't know that. So it was really coming into my mind, some of the scriptures and how to apply them. So, and I think when we have answered prayer, it increases our faith when we see our prayers answered. So I guess that's about all I was going to say.
Oh, good. Brian is home. Welcome home, Brian. I have a interesting, again, saying about prayers don't have to be very long. this is back in 1999. This kind of media that we're enjoying right now wasn't even a thought. I was working with some other IT type people, and we were doing a live stream to 4 feast sites. This is back in 1999. Video, audio, it was one way, but it was still, the transmission originated in Destin. It went to Wisconsin Dells. It went to Big Sandy. It went to Angel Fire. And everything depended upon what I had taught the gentleman in Destin to work properly. He had never done it before, and we really had no proof it was going to work. So, needless to say, a horrible hum came out of Destin, which went to all the feast sites. The video suddenly went out and didn't work. I was in the hallway at where we were meeting, literally prostrate on the floor, saying, "Father, no, 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 you can't let this happen." And I gave up. I just walked into the room and was trying to figure out how to talk to Anthony down in Destin to tell him, you got this, you got that, you check this. And I just ended up in frustration. I just looked up and went, "Do something." And then all of a sudden I felt like I just yelled at God. Instantly, the transmission cleared up. The video came back. Everything was fine. The whole transmission went flawless. It was great. And what had happened was apparently some young man ran through the sound booth down there and tripped over a wire and pulled it out and then plugged it back in when no one was looking. Anthony figured out, okay, this is in the wrong spot. He plugged it in the right spot, but it still didn't work. Our board up in the Dells, I could see things had changed and no one touched it. Anthony had the same thing down in Destin. The board, the whole configuration, the buttons and knobs had changed and no one touched it. So God's got fingers. But I mean, just the frustration. I just looked up and said, "Do something." And it did. I felt kind of scared at the moment, but it worked.
Sometimes he won't answer until you've resigned yourself to a certain course of action. And what I mean by that is I was in grad school at U of I many, many years ago. And it's winter break. I had no way of getting home other than the bus. And I had no way to get to the bus station because everyone was gone and there was no way to get cabs because it was snowing terribly, and they were saying the buses were going to be delayed anyhow. And I had exhausted all the possibilities, and finally I'm like, okay, God, whatever you want, but I'm just going to start walking and we'll see what happens. And as soon as I walked out the door, there was a neighbor that I'd never seen, never met before. And he said, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I'm hoping to get to the bus station." And he's like, "You want a lift?" And I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And he's like, "So where's your bus headed?" I said, "Lyle." He's like, "Really? No kidding. That's where I'm headed up in that area too. I could just take you home." And I said, "Well, I've already bought the bus ticket. My dad's expecting me to be on it, but thanks anyway." But needless to say, I got to the bus station and I ended up waiting another few hours. But I never saw the guy again. It was odd, but just worked out. But because I had resigned myself to, I'm just going to have to start walking and we'll see what happens. And that's what happened. Oh, I forgot to add that it was a literal ghost town. I mean, it's a college town. No one's there. It's the holidays. And that's why I was really surprised to see anybody.
I have a friend, and his name is Lewis Williams. I don't know if any of you know him. He's an older man, and he's blind since birth, and he married a blind woman, and they had a child who was not blind, and they raised that child by themselves without any help. And they were both converted. And but one day, the man Lewis was on his knees praying, asking for a job. He needed money to pay his rent, and so he was praying, and he got angry at God. And in fact, he even cursed. And he tells the story, so I know he doesn't mind me telling it because he tells it to everybody. But he said. He had to pray and tell God that about what he did. Anyway, he asked for a job, and someone knocked on the door while he was still on his knees, I believe. And he went to the door, and it was someone offering him a job. But he said he wants to warn everybody not to be like he did and curse God while he's on his knees, asking for something. And he said, but he's so thankful that God forgives something like that to a man who, well, how he says it, I can't remember. He says, to a dumb, blind, black man like me, he says, don't ever do that yourself. But he said he just was so tied up by not being able to pay his rent and things like that. But
Yeah, he's been to Chicago many, many years ago. A very powerful speaker.
yes, he speaks. I don't know where he went for the feast last year, but he does speak. And I think he did go to Chicago one year.
So long, Gina. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, thanks for waking everybody up. That was great. Any other comments or stories? Wow, silence. Well, if we don't have any other comments or stories or we may be wrapping it up for this evening. Oh, there's a.
Okay.
I don't know. Take this over here.
Okay.
It's closed Bible, so maybe.
Oh,
Okay, now you can read what they're saying.
okay. Yeah, Gail is saying about how we were praying for a sick tenant in ICU, and even everybody lost hope, but we kept praying, and now he's at his brother's, so that's a good praise report. He sounded pretty bad. Uh, it was kind of hopeless. That's good to hear.
You mentioned, yeah, it brings to mind Rich Daniels. How many times was he
Yeah.
on his last legs? All of a sudden, bang, he comes back.
Yeah.
I miss Rich.
Yeah.
He was pretty much regular on the Friday nights.
Let's see. Okay. Well, I could maybe leave this off with one story, maybe to,
Wrap things in.
well, it's a story. It got me thinking lately, and I was reading a story. I was actually doing another search and ran across, might say, a prophecies from a monk who was in Greece. He's a Greek Orthodox monk, and I thought, well, maybe I learned something, and but then I started reading about this guy, and he's gone for about 20 years now. So he was talking about actually the events that are happening now in Turkey and Syria, and giving predictions about that. That's what got me keyed into what he was saying, because it was very relevant. I thought, well, where does this come from? That it's just prophecies, a prophecy from a Greek Orthodox monk that it seems to be coming true. Well, then I learned more about him, and he lived up in the mountains, and people would line up before his little cottage every day. And his habit was, in the morning, he'd spend his time in prayer. And while he was praying, he would get messages of who was going to come, what their question was, and what the answer was. And so this was every day. People would line up, and he'd go and he'd call the people out by name, and had several witnesses to this, and he'd tell them what their problem was, what they should do about it, and the people who were telling the story said it always worked out just the way he said. And it got me thinking that he was a good example, and that maybe he's not right about everything, and but he's devoted in the area of prayer, and he's being blessed where he can touch other people's lives, and it got me thinking about it, and that that's something we should all be doing. And of course, we shouldn't be necessarily praying to icons or keeping Sunday and Easter. It's not really quite the same subject. We're talking about blessings for obedience, and if he devoted his life to prayer, maybe he was blessed for being obedient in that area. And that was actually a little part of my study, is to look for the examples and, to see, well, what is the right way and what are the godly examples? And I could relate more stories where I've known more ministries where they've done things like that, where they have intercessory prayer, for example, during a service. And, and then prayers are answered, person by person. And I've always thought, well, we should be that way. So that was some of my background thoughts about why I thought to talk about prayer tonight. And hopefully it was helpful.
Hey, Mike, this is Paul Blizzard. I kind of wrangled the microphone away from Lorene, but something that I've kind of noticed in the past, more recent past, since I've been in the church, is that it appears, like I said, I've been more recently into it. I don't have the background and quote unquote baggage from way back, but a lot of it still surfaces. I can see it when talking to people. And when basically being in counsel with them and praying for them, that I think they're still in that mindset that only an elder or the minister or whoever the leader, quote unquote leader, should be praying for them, because they don't feel comfortable or confident when you're praying for them. They don't. They ask, but there's always a but. They always have something. Yes, are you ready for us to pray for you, or ready for Yes, but, and then you have to stop and wait. There's no buts here. Either you are fully in or you're not. I mean, what's holding you back? What's preventing you from believing this is going to work? And I just kind of curious what your thoughts are about that. I mean, I know you got to be all in. My personal belief, you got to be all in, or else it won't work, because that's showing such a lack of faith that you have in that.
It's like checking that one.
In what you're saying there, Jeff Leedy, I've been in a couple of prayer sessions with him, and he asked the person that you're praying for, what do you want God to do? Be specific. Item by item, what do you want God to do? He asked that person in great detail, and a lot of people were like, I want to be healed. Healed of what? How do you want? Be specific. I really, I never thought of that. Here you're going before God. You can be specific. I want this fixed, that fixed, this, that. He actually makes them think, what are you asking for? It's a good thing.
In reference to Paul, what you're saying, it's the way I'm seeing it is what's holding them back are shackles of corporate dominance, you might say, and that's just that simple. And I think maybe that's another subject for intercessory prayer, because it just makes me so sad to see the shackles that people are in. But then on the other hand, maybe that's according to their faith also. And, in my own case, it was extreme trial and testing that caused me to seek and to cry out and to search with all of my heart. And so when I went through points in my life where it was just everything was going wrong, well, that's when I sought to go to a deeper level. And so, maybe all we can do is pray. Number one, pray for people that the shackles be removed. And then number two, that we can be there, supernaturally be there in some way to help them, and that we would speak God's words to them, and just come alongside them and help them through a trial, and that they could see God's power in their life in a way that they've never seen it before.
Exactly. The scripture loosely, I mean, I'm not quoting it verbatim, but it says, "To God be the glory," not to Pastor Smith or Pastor Jones or whoever their leader is. And that's something, like I said, I've noticed and recognized as probably being, I won't say the main problem, but it is a big hindrance, because we're not to follow any man, we're to follow God. And that's the tough part, because they're so ingrained with that. Like you're saying, the corporate churches have their leader or their leaders, their hierarchy. And there's only one to pray to for that. The one that gets the glory, gets the recognition for that, and that's God.
I think that, I was really surprised at myself that I was so naive that I never even knew that inside doctrine about the ministry, that they're the only ones allowed to carry a vial of oil in their pocket and to pray for others' healing, and and I just look at the sadness in the lives of the people that believe that. And so I sometimes I'm not sure whether it's appropriate to pray, and so I think sometimes we even need to pray about whether to pray for somebody and look for divine guidance.
Got comments again, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Praying for Israel.
Yeah. There's a number of things that we can pray for, as Gail is mentioning, is the events in Israel. We're told to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That's something we're told to do, and and I think about the people that maybe they're not just like we are as Christians, but there's a lot of people being killed for being Christians around the world, and not only that, raped and tortured and abused in so many ways, and it's just evil times that we're coming into. Just even to see that is just shocking. And so I think instead of looking at each other in an adversarial way, or even even looking at the individual Muslims in an adversarial way, is just to keep interceding and praying and looking for that circumstance that we personally can do something. Even if it's all we can do is pray, but there will be always someone that we can say something to, and if we're given the right word, it might be a transforming thing in their life. So I think it's just, as a prayerful person, we all need to be humble in how we treat each other, because that's the one thing that keeps us away from a true relationship with our Father in heaven, is pride, especially spiritual pride. And so if we seek to serve and we're humble towards other people, that will help us to stay closer in prayer also.
That's the beautiful thing about group prayer and group laying on of hands, is that you don't necessarily know which person in that cluster God's actually working through. It could be everybody, it could be one person, but no one gets the glory, only God gets the glory. It's just like, this is a morbid thing, but when you were supposed to remove the evil from among you, the whole congregation was throwing stones. So there wasn't necessarily any one person that would ultimately be responsible, it was a collective effort. And so just like punishment was a collective effort, so should prayer. Prayer should be a collective effort. We should all, be working together and interceding on each other's behalf. And Paul stepped away, but one of the things that we tried differently this year is as we were traveling back from Wyoming, we actually asked our waitress if she wanted us to pray for her. And if she did, what would she want us to pray for? And she was kind of taken aback, but not in a bad way. She's like, "You guys would do that for me?" And so we did right then and there. We prayed for her. And, it's just one of those things that you're moved to do. And it's like you were saying, Mike, you have the ability to plant the seed and God takes it from there. So that was one interesting experience we've had. And then the other, I was reading an article about when you do pray, how is it that you actually pray? And one of the suggestion was that when you do pray that, God, make it count. Whatever the outcome, make it count. So I'm still working through what that actually might mean, but those are a couple things that we're exploring at this time.
In James it says to confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The supplication of a righteous man prevails.
Yep.
Just my 2 cents worth on something else. So as far as, Don was talking about quick prayers or just something like that, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but personally, I used to get really annoyed at having to pull over and wait for an ambulance to go by or get caught in the traffic. And, okay, the lights are designed, have their sensor so it changes the light screen for the ambulances, but stops everybody else. Messes up the whole cycle. You're in a hurry to get somewhere. And for whatever reason, it's probably Lorene smacking me in the back of the head a few times, but not really. But just stop it and take a deep breath and reverse your thought process. People think, oh, it's an annoyance. Yeah, but there's somebody in the back of that ambulance going to the hospital. And now every time I hear a siren, an ambulance, you can usually tell the difference between a fire truck, ambulance, that kind of thing. But every time I hear an ambulance or see an ambulance, I stop and say a quick prayer for whoever's in the ambulance and the people that get them there to the hospital safely so they can be treated. It's a whole different ball game as far as, I guess, the old expression, walking a mile in somebody's shoes, that you need to kind of displace yourself from your stress, your hurry, your pressure, and to assist somebody. They don't know who you are. They never will until, we're all in the kingdom kind of thing. But as far as just saying a quick prayer of safety or healing or sustaining, at least until they could get to the hospital and be treated for whatever their injuries are or their illness is.
For quite a while, we had Dr. John Merritt in the area, and his forte was physical rehabilitation. And he was over at Freighter Hospital when he was here in charge of the rehab department. And he was working with a gentleman who was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was getting his upper body strength together and to deal with the lifelong situation he's going to be in. And he was walking him across, I guess, like a parallel bar or something. And then he stopped and dropped to the floor, and he went over to help him up. And he goes, "Oh, no, no, no. I hear the flight coming in. I'm praying for the people on that bird. Because if they're coming in for flight for life, those people are seriously injured." And he goes, "I know what it's like to be in that bird." So he was kind of like, wow, I never thought of that. All the Freighter Hospital, for those people who aren't from the Milwaukee area, is the leading triage hospital in one of the big ones in the Midwest. And if you're messed up, you go to Freighter. If you're on that bird, that helicopter, you're going to Freighter. You're bad. You're really bad. You're on the edge of not making it. And he had heard that helicopter come in hundreds of times while he was working there, and never really thought about the people on it. So he said from that day on, every time he heard the blades coming over the building, he threw a quick prayer up for those people's well-being. So sometimes it takes a total stranger to make you realize, the plight of others.
I also know that a lot of times it takes a lot of people, or it takes some people back, or take them aback, I guess is the expression. If you're talking to someone, it could be a total stranger, somebody like the work that I do as far as going to people's homes and do little home repair things, fix things for them. But you strike up conversations, and they're talking about, okay, such and such, my mom's having heart surgery next week or something like that, or and I will just politely said, well, would you mind if I wrote down her name so we could add her to our prayer list at church? I said, we'll pray for her. And so we have a very big internet connection too, as far as the whole electronic mode, that the more you can pray and get people to pray for them, the better chance. I wouldn't say it's like buying a lottery ticket when a big group or anything, but as far as there's power in prayer. And so they just kind of look at you like, wow. And one lady actually teared up. It's like, thank you. She came over and gave me a hug. Said, sure. I said, it's like nobody ever responds or, asks them that. And it's not like we have to have permission, but I don't like to go and, necessarily be forceful, but it's just being polite and ask them, do you mind if we pray for you or your mom or your family as far as what the situation is or whoever it is? And most of them are very pleasantly surprised and humbled. Not that that's the whole, attempt to do that, but it's really an incredible, humbling experience to see that, and how polite and how they can just open up and just soften up like that. It's really incredible.
Yeah. Marlene and Tom, thanks for tuning in. I see you're checking out now.
Well, if there isn't any other comments or suggestions or anything, we can start. I guess we could wrap this up. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.